The whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
President Donald Trump is touting the power of sunlight against the coronavirus in new research from the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. S&T Director Bill Bryan says hotter temperatures, humidity, and sunlight kills the virus in saliva droplets on surfaces and in the air.
Our most striking observation to date is the powerful effect that solar light appears to have on killing the virus, both surfaces and in the air. We've seen a similar effect with both temperature and humidity as well.
Recently, the World Health Organization said exposing yourself to the sun or to temperatures higher than 25 degrees Celsius or about 77 degrees Fahrenheit does not prevent the coronavirus. The WHO saying you can catch COVID-19 no matter how hot or humid the weather is. The WHO also warned about not using UV light to disinfect your body, saying UV radiation can cause skin irritation. Bryan says S&T scientists are also studying disinfectants like bleach and isopropyl alcohol.
Bleach will kill the virus in 5 minutes. Isopropyl alcohol will kill the virus in 30 seconds, and that's with no manipulation.
The president wondered if injecting disinfectant into someone's body could kill the virus.
And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Health experts quickly took to social media to warn people not to drink bleach or isopropyl alcohol to kill COVID-19.
The whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute.
Okay, hold on. Am I seriously supposed to believe that the most fully educated doctors, scientists, we're talking people that have been in school for, what, 8, 9, 10 years, then you throw in whatever type of management education some of the top leaders on the planet would have in infection control, understanding practices and procedures. Do you mean to tell me that they only just now figured out something that they would have already known, that people like Richie from Boston and your grandmother and moms all know that the vitamin D that you get from the sun, the whole point of why the Lord gave you the sun, I mean, lots of reasons why he gave it to you, but the fact that sunlight is efficacious to the health of your body and that viruses, germs, and things of that nature don't do well in sunlight. And I'm just now supposed to believe that they just happened onto this information. They didn't know it before.
People in Oregon have been depressed for hundreds, if not thousands of years because there's less sunlight in Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Alaska has more suicides per capita than any other state in the country, and it's been like that for a long time because there's less vitamin D. Vitamin D is not only great for your immune system, but it makes you depressed as hell if you don't get enough of it naturally.
Yes. And so they have this little staged press conference. They act as if we just sleuthed this detail that somehow had surpassed our understanding. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that. It doesn't even make sense. But these people seem to think that you, not you, my viewers, but people in general, a generic you, that you have the cognitive ability of a 3-year-old. And so they are playing these mind games with you by telling you something that they already would have known. That every single medical person, and probably even nurses, by medical person I mean doctors, nurses, and probably the assistants that are around doctors and nurses listening to them talk all the time, yabbering, all of those people would have already known, yeah, going in the sunlight is really good for you. And it prevents, not prevents necessarily, but it helps to clear up viruses anyhow. Then you start asking yourself, so why would your government, who hates you with a passion, be keeping you inside? Why would you have all the celebrities telling you through pressuring and nonsense not to go outside? Why do you have police officers chasing down health nuts that want to be able to go out and exercise? And it's their right to do so. If you want to go run on the beach, it's your God-given right to go run on the beach. But you've got officers running people down and then issuing tickets. You've got, I mean, we could just go on and on and on with examples of this cataclysmic evil that is coming along to tell you what to say and what to think and what to do, and then ticket you when you do the exact opposite of what they just decided they're going to release and tell you that everybody on planet Earth just about already knows. This is ridiculous. So then it gets better. Then they're willing to release the detail that, wait for it, disinfectants kill the virus. They're acting like they just, came into awareness of this. They act like these people just discovered fire. You can cook with it and stuff. No, this is basic kindergarten level medical information. Why are they acting like they're not aware that alcohol and various other bleach and things like that can kill germs? Are you serious? This is like putting your brain in a blender and totally disrespecting you. I hope you are so offended right now, because I know I am.
I'm always offended, especially at the U.S. government.
They're acting like they just figured it out. Like, now we know bleach kills germs. Really? And then the best part of all, my cat's all wigged out right now because I'm all intense with my voice, because I'm annoyed. The Christian actor Trump then asks the question, can we inject disinfectant into the human body to clean it up? The man is like 70 some years old. He is screwing with you. There's just no other way to explain it. These people are telling you in this gaslighting sort of manner that this is exactly what they're going to do to some of you who are going to be here for this. Didn't I just yesterday or the day before, I make so many videos, I forget what videos I made on what day, just within the last 2 days, we'll say, I warned you of this, that some of the vaccines in these tent cities that I'm calling them, outside of hospitals, that like Samaritan's Purse and other fake Christian Mason organizations are setting up, and at our fairgrounds here in my local town where we live, very close to Portland, Oregon, they're creating tent cities or whatever you want to call them for a staging ground to inject you. And I warned you, friends, they're going to inject you. And I said Clorox or Drano, I think. I mean, those were just examples of something that you would not want to mainline into the human system and expect them to live, but rather hasten your death. They are on television telling you, and he looks away, right? He looks away, not into the camera because he's a big giant liar, and asks the question that no 70-year-old multi-billionaire living in America would ask. Can you inject Clorox or bleach into the human body and clean it out? I'm gobsmacked that not only is he asking this, he's not asking from ignorance. He's telling you without telling you. But remember, everything is put in this incompetent projection. Well, we don't know what we're doing, so they get away with all this. But he's telling you that they're going to be injecting some of you with some pretty nasty stuff, not as a vaccine to help you from the seasonal thing, but rather to hasten your murder. And you're seeing it right here from the President of the United States. Unbelievable. And no, the question is no. I mean, the answer to the question where he looks away because he can't look you in the eyes while he's telling you we're setting up the tent cities so that for those who will be here, you're going to get injected with things that are going to murder you, which is exactly what your Bible says. Today I am mad. I am mad because I don't like my people being hurt. I don't like Americans being hurt. And they're not just going to do it to Americans. And then, you know, they're probably going to inject the microchip thing into the other parts of the world that they're not ready to bump off just yet. Give it time, though. So we warned you about all of that yesterday or the day before, and now they're talking about it on TV. Okay, so this goes to show you more explanation. Well, why would they want to inject you with poisons? Why would they want to inject you with God only knows what?
Why wouldn't they? They hate you and they want to get rid of you.
Right, because guess what? The jobs are gone. So we're over here at one of my favorite financial guys. Don't think he's a Christian, but the Money GPS, 26 million. That's the new head count. Jobs cut and more are coming. Major banks see $1 trillion deposit inflow. Okay, so they know that sunlight, we already talked about this, sunlight kills the virus, and bleach and disinfectants kill it in the workspaces. So if they know all that, do you see how they're sabotaging your economy, your jobs, everything to get you parlayed onto the universal monies, universal, I forget the phrase of it now. I just did a video on it. Basic income, UBI, universal basic income. Well, that's only just to secure your faith, and there's still a coming global famine. There's still a coming murder for the masses. They're just playing with you and toying with you. Well, we're going to give you so much more money on an ongoing system. So a family of 4, depending on ages and this and that, blah, 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 could be getting as much as $2,000 each parental head, and then $500 for each child, 15 and under, $2,000 for a 16, 17-year-old. So that's a lot of money. Does it make sense to you? The government wants to just give you all this money? No, it's just, it's worthless paper that for a moment, while they tell you it has wealth, you can go out and buy, and people are going for the electronics, man. The stores can't even keep that stuff in stock. Well, I don't know about all stores, but you know, people got money and they want a bigger TV so that Big Brother can watch you even, you know, better, and you watch them and they watch you and stuff like that, and computers and things like that. Well, it's not normal the government's giving out free money. Again, that is just to instill confidence in you, a false sense of security, and then when you least suspect it, you come in for your vaccines, and people during the tribulation, when that begins, start becoming injected with things that are going to harm you and hurt you, which is why you have the tents and the fake Christians that are helping to support this whole thing. Anyhow, I want to hear what he has to say about the job cuts.
Getting worse. 26 million people in the US are unemployed. The solution? Give some people $1,200 and give the banks billions. If someone gets upset, pretend like you didn't know what's going on. It's
right.
As if people feel they're winning. But look carefully, they're losing. Inflation destroys them, money printing ruins them, the heavy burden of rising taxation punishes them, and the magnitude of impending crisis keeps them in a state that they can't get out of. All cheered on by the public as they chant and beg for more. More of the same. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you today. I have a very big video. Every single day, I'm looking at the information, I'm looking at the data, it's coming through so fast, I can't keep up, but I try to do my best to give you these videos. I've got a lot of economic indicators to discuss today. I want to look at the jobs numbers, of course. I want to talk about what's happening here with real people, how this affects you as the individual, Let's begin. The US economy has wiped out all of the job gains since the Great Recession. You've probably already seen the numbers out there, but let me just go through this quickly. I have a couple charts to show you. They have increased by 4.4 million in a week, and the current total is at 26.5 million. This is a massive amount that have found themselves unemployed. But what makes it even worse is that when you look at the information that's been coming through, there's actually a backlog of people who have filed but who haven't been processed. So this number right now today is actually much higher, even by the government's own standards. Then you look at the people who are still employed, but they've shifted over into something else. They're now an Uber Eats driver. They're now driving for Uber if they can find work. They're trying anything they can to bring some money in, but it's not necessarily enough to pay the bills. Sure, you're not going to end up on the government stats, but you're definitely struggling. I'll show you some examples of that. Here are the initial claims, and you could see that this has in fact been declining over the last few weeks, but we're still talking about over 4 million people in a week. And it might be hard to see, but right down at the bottom here, it looks like it's kind of just a line going across. This is the normal, quote unquote, normal amount that month after month you see them varying, but essentially all within a range. But as soon as all of these companies started to lay people off, we got this huge spike upward. Now they've been saying that, well, it's not so bad because we can kind of predict where the numbers are going to be, and it has been declining. Things aren't getting worse. But of course, as I have mentioned before, I do believe that we could actually see a leveling off where it would just continue with millions of people filing, or perhaps even a surge upward, as a lot of these companies right now, they're contemplating, should we just close down? Should we just end this whole thing? Every day they're going through that process. There are so many different companies, big, small, doesn't matter. They're all kind of deciding right now. They're probably going through the financials. They're seeing it. Does it make sense to file for bankruptcy and so on?
Okay, and this is so obvious that this whole thing has been predicated on a lie, and that this is really about the unfolding of this new cultural shift of neo-communism taking over the planet. We talk about this all the time. The fact that they are now admitting, oh yeah, sunlight disinfectant, that's what we need. These people are playing with your heads, and this is the way that the devil works with his people, in the lying and the playing games with people. And so here he is explaining on this that there's more people that are deciding whether they can even stay open, whether it's even worth it. We were driving the other day doing something, and one of our local Christian, really nice coffee shops, a big one too, like a big diner one where you can go in there and sit down. And I don't know if they did Christian concerts and other stuff like that. I'm really not sure. I've never been in there. But anyhow, the guy that obviously owned it was outside pulling all of his stuff down, pulling the sign down, pulling everything down because they were done. They have been driven out of business. This is just one example. They have been driven out of business by this global government, by this beast kingdom that Daniel and John of Revelation both saw. And now you're watching it too. But the churches aren't even telling people that what you're seeing and experiencing, this is what makes me so frustrated, is that Revelation 12 dragon. We just did a video about an hour in 10 minutes or whatever, talking about all this. The churches aren't telling you that what you're experiencing is what your Bible says would happen. They're so busy hyper repeating what Trump says. And are you staying blah, blah, blah feet under? I mean, away from each other. That's not being the church, lying to them and spewing propaganda. And when pastors start doing that, I'm done with you. You're a waste of my time. If you're not going to teach me the Bible and teach me what I need to know right now, you are of no value to me. And I'm done with you. I don't have time to play around.
Regardless, many people are going to be laid off. Unemployment in the U.S. is swelling to levels last seen during the Great Depression of the 1930s, with 1 in 6 American workers thrown out of a job. At the bottom, you got the chart here, and essentially we're looking at the same information going back to the year 2000. However, you do see a spike right here during the financial crisis, but it looks like nothing in comparison because it didn't happen over a long period of time. It was just sudden. Everything is shut down. Here we go. This is it. Well, we'll see how this goes in the coming weeks if it does persist. So we've all heard about the V-shaped recovery and how this is going to be the way that things really play out. This is it. The Fed has got it. The government stimulus is going to happen. Don't worry, we're all good. Then we heard about the soft V. Well, it's not really a V, but it's kind of like a V. Then we heard about the U pattern. Well, okay, it's not going to happen with the soft V. Now it's going to be a U pattern. Okay, fine. Okay, now it's a Nike swoosh pattern. This is the one they're talking about here. But a new letter of the alphabet has come on the page, and that is a W-shaped recovery. That's right, a W-shaped recovery. Every letter of the alphabet is being taught here to the general public. It's complete nonsense, but I thought it was pretty funny. There are actually a couple of points in here that I wanted to touch on. The reference of the W pattern here is basically saying that a wave of bankruptcies and defaults later this year could actually happen. As companies go belly up, a domino effect ensues, workers aren't rehired, suppliers aren't paid, and fear rises about who will be next to fall.
Yeah, so this is a big takeaway from his video here that I want to tie in and give the biblical worldview on what's happening, because you're not going to get it from him. But he's basically explaining that this cataclysmic sabotage, which he gets that part of it, that's been put into place, has a ripple effect, or whatever you want to call it, butterfly effect, ripple effect, whatever, so that the damage that they have implemented now is so far out in the future of continual collateral damage, or however you want to phrase that, that it will continue eating economies, eating industries, eating businesses, eating everything up, like that Nothing from that stupid movie I was telling you about before in another video, the never-ending story, which I did some research on, and is Gnostic in nature, ironically. But anyhow, this is why they're coming up with this legislation that I was spending this morning listening to for the UBI. And, you know, they have been peppering that into your consciousness now for a while. And most people would say, well, I won't take communism. I won't. But see, when they create the problem and then they give you, you know, then there's the reaction, that's the natural reaction. And then they have that crafted it's their solution. Then people are put in a position where they have nothing. A lot of families have nothing. They don't even have food. So they would be already in that position of having to take what the government gives them. And at first that sounds all good and dandy until you kind of realize the game that's being played, who's playing it, the Freemasons, why they're doing it, and their ultimate end goal. And of course, I would be very concerned about not letting a needle go in my arm if I wasn't sure what was in that needle. And I certainly don't trust, I don't plan on being here, but I don't trust these entities and the way that they're playing games with you and asking stupid questions. Can you inject poison into the body to cleanse it? That really just gets me. They're talking about all of these different letters to represent, you know, this recovery that's not really a recovery. It's just making the problem worse and worse and worse. And he's talking about, you know, later in the year, you're going to see kind of the greater impact of where this damage is going. And of course, you know, my heart is going, yeah, October, I'm keeping an eye on October for the judgment. I'm keeping an eye on the rescue that's coming. I have so many videos discussing that, so I don't want to go over that again, but you know, it matches with the time frame of their anticipated explosion of more problems, and just the fact that they act like, you know, oh, we didn't know, we had no idea. It is that level of deception played through this ignorance card that really makes me upset.
As well, because they're thinking, what's going to happen next month? I have no idea. I'm not going to go out there and start going full force into this if the demand isn't going to be there. Maybe they have a whole bunch of inventory sitting around. Why do they need to get their workers really working on stuff when maybe now isn't the time? So it's a lot of questions that need to be really answered before we can go into this any further. But one thing I'm not worried about is the banks. That's right, the banks are just so fantastic. Every single time there's a crisis, you're either going to get a bailout or you're going to profit. All the way to the bank? Well, take a look at this. The situation we're dealing with today made America's biggest banks even bigger. Some $1 trillion in deposits flooded in during the first quarter, with more than half going to JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup. That's right, the usual suspects. $1 trillion in deposits. I'll show you the chart here in just a second, but I just want to highlight the fact that this happens every single time. They don't get smaller. They don't get more secure. They don't get safer. I see those comments all the time. I see those articles all the time, and I see the people in the industry repeating the same nonsense, and yet people still don't get it. Well, I'm glad that you are here because you're one of the few who's actually willing to accept the truth. Total deposits, you can see the comparison of the first quarter 2020 to the fourth quarter 2019. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup all enjoying more deposits. And what does that mean? More deposits come in, fractional reserve banking, they could expand that out even further. This is what's been happening all along, and this is a reason for them to expand. Hey, they don't even need to have reserves anymore. Why even bother with the whole deposit thing, since they create money out of thin air, all thanks to this garbage system that they've decided to set up and force us on. But that's what we're dealing with. You can see the deposits at U.S. commercial banks changed from the previous quarter. Just to give you an idea of that trillion, it hasn't been like this since the financial crisis. So you would see some changes happening, of course, all the time, in or out, but there's a massive surge right now. Of course, the banks love that, and right here we could see something that proves they've won yet again. Credit cards start offering lower limits. Can you believe it? Have you ever heard of this before? Lower limits. They usually expand, but they realize what's going to happen here. There's going to be a lot of people that default. And they want to make it look like they are actually being prudent, that they are doing their best to stop it from happening, from stopping people from taking that risk. Well, why didn't they do so 6 months ago? Well, everything was fine. GPS, stop freaking out about everything. There's not going to be a problem. You don't have to worry. Major U.S. credit card issuers are starting to lower customer spending limits as millions of Americans are left jobless and struggling to keep up on loans. They mention more details in here. I'm not going to get into all of it. That's all you really need to know for this. People are unemployed. They're not going to be able to pay their bills. That puts pressure on the financial institutions, and of course the derivatives begin to unwind. A government effort to give Americans a break on their mortgage payments hasn't provided the relief many homeowners were hoping for. Of course, this is the way it goes. They try to make it seem like everything's going to be okay because we did this or that, but the underlying fundamentals are there for everybody to see. The stimulus package allows homeowners with federally backed loans to suspend their monthly payments for up to a year without penalty if they face financial hardship. Sounds good on the outside. I'm sure a lot of people are going to benefit from this, but check this out. But the law doesn't specify what happens after the so-called forbearance period ends. Many borrowers say that they are being told that they would have to make lump sum balloon payments. If you look further in the article, some of them have been told this, others say that's not the case, that's not how it works. They can simply figure out a way, change their payment structure, they'll work with them essentially. But regardless, that money, if it doesn't get paid back to those banks, the banks are going to have some serious problems with their derivatives, and it looks like that's the most likely scenario. That's why on yesterday's video, that quite frankly didn't get enough views, I talked about this issue, how this could easily expand into something that is worse than the financial crisis, the housing crisis, because it's not subprime mortgages that expands into these other avenues and we see the derivatives begin to unwind. No, no, no. It's everything all at once. Auto industry, airline industry, the factories, manufacturing, retailers, all at once. It's never been like this before.
He makes an excellent point. Did you just hear him name off every single one of these industries that are all in collapse at the same time? And then he notes that we've never seen anything like this before. And then he goes over and so extremely expert level defines the issue that the government is just having you kick the can down the street with this idea that you're somehow going to be able to make this big, huge lump payment when you're behind on your mortgages for the businesses. I don't know if it's for personal. I think it's just businesses. I don't know if it extends beyond that. I don't know. But whatever. But this person in the article was saying that just regular people, duh, if you're out of work, if someone doesn't have the income, how do you expect them to pay 3 or 4 months all in one big chunk? Well, exactly. For, you know, this 3-month forbearance.
Handling your gun, you still get shot in the line.
Period. Their greatest desire is to just bring the whole infrastructure globally, but I'm specifically talking about America. Although this is a global problem, you can't escape from that. But this is their greatest dream, to just crash the whole thing, run it into the wall, so that they can erect it back the way that they want and with fewer people. And again, it goes back into the depopulation. It goes back into them injecting stuff into you. It goes back into the tents and what they're going to do to you. And much more could be said on that. Much more. So when things don't make sense, they don't make sense for a reason, because they have a hidden goal that they want to take you to that they don't admit to you. They just come out with this, you know, oh, we don't know what we're doing, we're incompetent. And then the people just trust them for some reason. I don't know why everybody trusts the government. Why do you do that? Why do you trust the media? Why do you trust everybody? And you're the ones that are going to be hurt in the end. Well, not those who were in Christ, but most people aren't in Christ. The people who have failed to be born again are the ones that are going to, see the very enacting of that parable that he told, or story, or whatever you want to call it, of the people that built their house on the sand. And the storm came, and there was a great disaster. You're being set up for that right now. This is unbelievable.
Begin to unwind. No, no, no. It's everything all at once. Auto industry, airline industry, the factories, manufacturing, retailers, all at once. It's never been like this before.
That's only part of it. He didn't mention the oil industry. He didn't mention the medication industry, and where a good portion of your medicines are made are in China. China hates your guts. He didn't mention that we're indebted to China, and when China wants their money, they know China knows that we can't pay it. There's so many layers of evil at play here. It's hard to get your arms around the whole thing. And it's just hard to sit and watch this stuff happening because you know that it's just being built up to a bigger thing. It's kind of like when somebody has like a major infection or, you know, whatever it is, some kind of infection on your foot or something, and you don't go to the doctor and you think, oh, by ignoring it, it'll get better. And or, you know, some people cancer and they just ignore it because they're afraid. I mean, there's many analogies you could use, but this is what your government is kind of forcing you into. Just ignore it and it'll go away. And you know that it's just going to advance and get worse and worse and worse. And that's so they can just collapse everything down. They don't want you to make your payment. They want to be able to come in and buy up everything for pennies on the dollar and steal it from you. That's what's going on. And then murder you off because you're the robbery victim. You're the rape victim. That's what's going on. They love their money. They don't love you. They love their money. They don't love Jesus. They love their God, the fake one, Lucifer.
While some people are struggling, some people are hurting right now at this time, the billionaires, well, they're doing just fine. That's right. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, myself, Branson, all of us, we got our private jets and we are going to be okay. The billionaire class total wealth increased by 10% or $282 billion more than it was at the beginning of March. They now have a combined net worth of $3.2 trillion. It's so absurd. Try to make a joke about it. It's a little ridiculous. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is much worse than what we saw during the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
And now with this issue happening, it's going to be way, way beyond what we could ever expect. And what do? They try to create programs that go through these institutions, they go through government. They're all a big waste of money. They grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and they simply consume, and the average person doesn't get anything from it. They get the scraps. Now, I'm not blaming any of these particular individuals, whether it's Bezos, the guy from Zoom. They like to name names, but it's the system itself that's designed this way so that they can have it. Why does so much money have to flow the way that it does instead of a system built around a strong middle class? That doesn't exist anymore. There was a time for that, but look at the growth of GDP over time, slowly but surely declining. You don't get enough output anymore. And why? It's because the central banking failure is the reason why there are no economic detox periods. The Federal Reserve essentially stands in the way of all of that. As I've shown you so many times before, there's this sine wave, which you might seen in so many different patterns out there. This is a natural process, which you can relate to, so many different things. But the Federal Reserve tries to be there to stop it while it's at its certain point and send it back up. If you disrupt nature, you end up getting smacked in the face. Really quickly, I want to show you this chart. The cost of a barrel of oil in nominal terms, that's at the top, and the cost of a barrel of oil in real terms or inflation adjusted terms. Historically, going back to 1870, we have never seen anything like this. Think about that. All the way back from 1870 to the present, there's been a lot of volatility with oil. It's been up, it's been down, it's been all over the place. There have been crises, there have been periods where it has been subdued, but we have never seen anything like this. We are living through historical times. Real estate right now is something interesting. I haven't covered it that much. Basically, we're just in a waiting period. Buyers and sellers are kind of just hanging out, waiting for this to pass before they continue on. I think because of what's happening with the jobs, with the layoffs, and with the concerns about the future, we're not going to be so sure of what's happening, and therefore we could see a slowdown. Depending how bad the numbers are, depending what happens with the debt, that's going to determine specifically what occurs with real estate. So I don't really like to cover it too much because then we get into the speculation. The numbers look really bad right now on all levels. You can look at any type of number surrounding real estate right now. It looks really bad. But I don't necessarily just want to show you all that because like I said, it's a wait and see period, not necessarily anything to do with a particular problem as a result of something else. If towards the end of the year things haven't picked up, things look really bad, I think that the prices will come down heavy. And of course, regardless if if we get mass layoffs that persist into the end of the year, then for sure this will become a trend. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you're supporting me. Thank you. If you want to see my information that I put out every single day on Instagram, on Twitter, on any...
Okay, so these devils are also trying to play with people's minds as far as censoring people on social media about legitimate food shortages. You're not allowed to talk about that. And then they categorize everything that is true as fake news to hide it from people. But if there is going to be a bounce back, as they keep telling us, then how is that going to work when they're destroying the food supply? Someone's lying. And it's not the people who are trying to warn and speak out. You're being played with. Let's listen. We're over here at Ice Age Farmer, by the way.
Let me just be the first to assure you that everything is fine. That you can go to Twitter and you can find a litany of voices all discussing the safety and security of our food system. And although you might look for any dissenting voices, you won't find them because it is no longer allowed to talk about food running out on Twitter. As of today, they have amended their use policy to get rid of this and other pesky conspiracy theories under the guise that they may be inciting harmful activity or violence from people. Specifically, talking about food shortages could lead to widespread panic or social unrest or large-scale disorder. In other words, their argument is that this is not protected speech because it's the equivalent of yelling fire in a crowded Twitter. But the problem, of course, is that there are tons of other people, including experts and the United Nations and JBS and Smithfield and Tyson, each of whom have shut down the largest meat packers in the United States right now, that are warning about the impending food shortages that will necessarily result when you shut down agriculture. That's what happens. That's what they create there. Without the meat coming out of those factories, it's not going to be on the stores. And as I warned in my last video, when we heard about Tyson moving workers willy-nilly from infected closed plants to the ones that were still open, like Waterloo, and I said, give it a couple days, Waterloo will be shut down too now. Yes, yesterday they closed down Waterloo. That is their largest pork processor in the United States. And that brings the total capacity that's shut down to 15% of the total U.S. pork production. This has significant ramifications beyond our company. It means the loss of a vital outlet for farmers and ranchers and contributes to the disruption of the nation's pork supply, to say the least. And that's just the latest shutdown in these continuing and cascading, the dominoes falling one after another, series of plant closures affecting the meat processing capacity. Indiana shutting down a meat plant by Tyson, and Tyson also shutting down their Washington beef facility. JBS shutting down another factory in Canada. It's just one after another. Every day it looks like this. Follow me on Twitter at Ice Age Farmer, and you'll just see one after another. I get posted. We're also now seeing warnings that the USDA inspectors themselves have been infected with this coronavirus and might be spreading it as they go from plant to do the inspections. So it's just a question of who's watching the watchers at this point. Just a disaster on all fronts. And of course, many more plants are still at risk or have already been slowed down, their capacity greatly diminished. We read here from USA Today, operators may have to choose between workers' health or meat in the stores. And I just want to point out, there was another plant that has already been now shut down for 2 weeks that was scheduled to come back online. But the union is saying, hell no, we're not going in there. We're not going to come to work in those conditions again. You must be out of your mind. So although most of these plants have been closed indefinitely, even those that put a come back to work date on it aren't finding themselves able to start back up. So production is slowed down across the board. We are eating through our reserves. The USDA's report yesterday on cold storage revealed that we are taking a larger month-to-month drawdown in frozen pork stocks and in other proteins as well. And that was before these plants were even shut down. That's before we've even started feeling the real heat that results from these plants shut down. And like I said, experts across the industry are warning we're heading straight into this meat shortage. Prices are getting weird from the LA Times today. This really puts it all out there. This is what I've been saying for weeks, but now this is straight from the LA Times. Currently 15% of hog slaughtering capacity is offline. There are additional slowdowns in beef, poultry, and pork. We went through each of the proteins in my last video and talked about the mass kills that are already going on. Euthanasia, it's horrific out there. We are in a sea of death, and you may not hear it or see it, but you can feel it if you know what's going on. This is a situation, yes, where pigs get euthanized and buried as supplies back up. Meanwhile, retail costs are going to rise as grocery stores will mandate rationing on pork chops. This is each of the things that we said in our 2-week outlook just last week. The National Guard was activated to help protect the supplies. There's the government getting involved to make sure continuity of food supply. Here, according to Dennis Smith, senior account executive at Archer, quote, meat shortages will be occurring 2 weeks from now in the retail outlets. This is exactly what we said. There is simply no spot pork available. The big box stores will probably get theirs, but nobody else has any chance. In March, frozen pork inventories, like we just looked, dropped 4% from February. That's the biggest drops in March since 2014. So we're drawing down what we do have frozen. And as he says here, when you talk about cold storage, it's never really that much. It's roughly about a week's worth of production in the freezer. So that's our buffer. Folks, we've shut down the processing. We've got a week of it in the freezer. And that's why 2 weeks from now, it will no longer be in the stores. You will be some cuts that aren't there at all. And on the rest of it, you'll be severely limited to what you can buy. This is why the Secretary of Agriculture today went to Trump and to VP Pence and said, look, we urgently need to help out farmers and ranchers, and we need to figure out how to get rid of all these animals that they're killing off. We need standards for humane euthanasia and disposal of animals. That should make it very clear that this is already an active problem, that there are ranchers across the nation right now who, rather than selling at a loss, because slaughterhouses will charge you if you go over their... It's, you know, we heard from some other interviews why this is going on, but never mind, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. We're not allowed to talk about food shortages, even though we just heard the Secretary of Agriculture telling us that it's coming, and every other producer out there saying I'm having to kill my hogs. There's nothing wrong, and I'm not allowed to tell you that the food might run out.
Okay, so, yeah, signs of gaslighting. Their actions don't match their words. Distracts from their behavior by projecting onto you. Degrading comments followed by positive reinforcement. They attempt to block or are unsupportive of your growth. They lie plus deny things even when there is proof. Telling you you're crazy, wrong, imagining things. But our government finds you on top of it. Do you see the little game that's being played? So he just went on to discuss his annoyance that he wasn't able to verbalize on the social media talking to people about this issue. And then he was talking about what he's already discussed, which is the CO2 shortage that keeps things frozen, that somehow works into the availability of the water supply. I mean, this is the darkness of the satanic world around you and organized destruction. That's what's going on.
Have to start giving you water rationing as well, because we're not getting our CO2. They've already fallen 33% of normal, and we use that carbon dioxide to get a certain pH in your municipal water. So without it, we can't bring you water, and that means you're only going to be allowed, whatever, 20 gallons a day. Make something up. This is what's coming. And it's going to come. I can promise you this now. It's written on the wall, because ADM today just announced they're going to shut down their ethanol production as well, which even further exacerbates the CO2 shortage. So all of these things.
Okay, and so what you have to understand is that this is Agenda 21. This is Agenda 2030. This is the rationing of water, the rationing of food, the getting you off of the dependence of animals for food. This is the pagans achieving their objective, but through the lie and through the cataclysmic dominoes from hell that have been sent toppling. They're not even being honest with you. Although there will be an article that comes out where they quote the actual expert who's running the show of that particular facility saying there's a food shortage, but then you're not allowed to go over to Twitter or probably FB or whatever and then tell people that under the guise that it's fake you know what, when in all reality it isn't. This is exactly how 1984 does everything. It's inverted and flipped. Then they fiddle around with the electricity and the grids. And oh, that might also be taken away. And a lot of this he already discussed. The hosing of 2 million chickens. But it's not for what they're saying. And they've already bragged about, yeah, we can end animal agriculture by 2035. Well, again, this fits in with Noahide. This fits in with them saying you're going to do things the way the rabbis said. Got it? That whole thing. You're just being controlled by these demonic, spirit-worshipping humans that aren't even being honest with you. And why would they? But that's what's actually going on.
Impossible Foods, whose CEO said, yes, we're coming out. We're ending animal agriculture. These are their stated goals, and we are now watching them execute on them. This is why they were giving millions of dollars to these lab-grown protein companies. Look, the world without slaughter sounds great, but the slaughter is going on now. And the slaughter includes not just the animals at these operations that these ranchers are having to kill off and not get to market, but it includes those of us who depend on these systems to eat. That's the real slaughter they're doing right now.
Yep.
But we're not allowed to talk about that. And he just continues there. Bill Gates, $75 million, Impossible Burger. Look for Impossible Burgers at Burger King coming back once they can't get their beef anymore. But we're not allowed to talk about it. Everything's fine. I'm not inciting panic. In fact, I owe you an apology. You should not listen to me at all. I've been wrong all these years. They have no desire to take over our food supply. You shouldn't be growing your own food. You should not be spreading this word about this. You should never share this video by any means. You out of your mind? You're not allowed to talk about it on social media. Ladies and gentlemen, when the censorship is announced like this, I think it adds credibility to the message, and I do ask for you to spread this message, and I do ask for you to go find farmers and ranchers in your local area that need your help now. That's basically all of them. And lend a hand however you can, and make sure that we are building new systems that can feed our communities just as rapidly as they are actively tearing them down right now.
Right, but do you want to know what God says will happen? Because really, that's all that matters. What does God tell us is going to occur as they're building? What verse is that? Oh, no, I don't recommend these people. They're a cult. No, they're awful. I just want a picture. That's where they're going to take this. They're not telling all of this to you now. It's okay, kitty. But this is where it's going. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And so the rich, wealthy had the oil and the wine that was not to be harmed. And the poor were, spending a whole day's wage for one meal of one substance of barley or whatever. So that's where the actual truth lies. Hold on before I let you go.
So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that? By injection inside or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, that's an admission. They're going to use medical doctors, all right.
In just hours, Governor Newsom is expected to update us on when the state can start easing restrictions and reopen non-essential businesses.
Sorry about that. Seal 1, the Antichrist. Seal 2, a war on humanity. And it looks like, from Jesus' words, nation against nation, ethnos against ethnos. You know, fighting for food, fighting for supplies, fighting for this, fighting for that. And then seal 3 is that famine that we talked about. And seal 4 is the real pestilence and animal beasts likely attacking people for food themselves. There could even be an AI component to that as well. I don't know. Robotic animals, I don't know. But anyhow, that they're setting up for all this kind of thing. This is so nonsensical. They are playing a game on you, and it is not going to end well. Anyhow, thank you. Bye.